Have you ever walked into the bathroom after your elderly parent and just had that weird feeling something wasn't right? Maybe the towel hanging on the rack is bone dry, even though it's been 2 days since their last shower. Or maybe the toilet seat hasn't been lifted, not even once, and you start to wonder, did they even go today? There's this faint smell of body powder in the air, but the soap still looks untouched. You shrug it off. Maybe they forgot. Maybe it's nothing. But what if it's not? What if those little signs, the ones we brush aside every day, what if they're not just quirks of old age? What if they're quiet alarms trying to tell you that something in their body is changing, and not in a good way? Because here's the truth. When you're caring for someone older, a parent, a grandparent, a spouse, it's the small things that matter most. The things that don't say out loud. The things that show up in the silence of bathroom. These small habits, they could be early signs of something dangerous building up in the background. A risk that's very real. A stroke. And I'm not talking about some vague future concern. I'm talking about a risk that, if ignored, could triple their chances of ending up in a hospital bed. Unable to speak. Unable to move. And you left wondering if you missed something you should have seen. That's what this video is about. In the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through 5 hidden bathroom habits most people don't even think twice about. Habits that, in seniors, can quietly increase the risk of stroke by up to 300%. You'll learn what to notice, how to respond, and most importantly, how to step in before it's too late. Because knowledge doesn't just give you power, it gives you peace. Peace that you did everything you could to protect the people you love most. So stay with me. Watch closely, because what you learn today could save a life tomorrow. And if you're here because you care, really care, about someone in your life, drop a comment below that says, I'm here. Let's make this a community where we learn together, support each other, and show up for the people who once showed up for us. And don't forget to hit subscribe to Elderly Care. This channel exists for one reason: to help you give the best love, the best care, and the best protection to the elders who raised us. All right, let's dive in. Habit 1, prolonged sitting on the toilet. Now, I want you to picture this. Mr. Carter, 78 years old, retired school principal, still drove himself to the grocery store, still fixed his own breakfast every morning. He was the kind of man who didn't want help, didn't ask for it, didn't need it. Or at least, that's what he wanted everyone to think. One morning, his wife noticed something strange. She'd made coffee, fed the cat, even watered the plants on the porch. But Mr. Carter still hadn't come out of the bathroom. She knocked. No answer. Opened the door. And there he was, still sitting on the toilet, hunched forward, pale and dizzy. He looked up at her and said, almost in a whisper, I just needed another minute. But it wasn't just a minute. He'd been sitting there for nearly 20. See, what most people don't realize is that long periods of sitting on the toilet, especially in a strained position, can be extremely dangerous for seniors. Why? Because sitting like that, especially while pushing or straining, raises blood pressure. The veins constrict, circulation slow, and if there's already plaque in the arteries, as there often is at that age, that extra pressure can push things over the edge. Blood flow to the brain drops. Oxygen gets cut off. And just like that, a stroke can begin silently, right there in the bathroom. But here's the heartbreaking part. Most families don't think twice about it. They assume he's probably just constipated again, or she just needs more time. You know how it is at that age. But it's not always just about digestion. Sometimes it's a silent sign that the heart and brain are struggling to keep up. Now, what can you do? You don't need to hover or invade their privacy, but you can make small changes that go a long way. Start by encouraging more water. Simple, I know, but dehydration is a major reason older adults get constipated in the first place. Add some more fiber, fruits, oatmeal, maybe a little psyllium husk here and there. And here's one you may not have thought of. Set a soft bathroom timer. Not an alarm that rushes or embarrasses them. Just a gentle reminder to check in after 10 minutes. You can even make a routine. Hey Dad, if you're in there longer than a few minutes, just holler so I know you're okay. You're not nagging. You're not being overprotective. You're being wise. Because these aren't just habits, they're signals. Signals the body sends, asking for help before something worse happens. And prolonged sitting is just the beginning. Because what happens after they finally stand up might be even riskier. Habit 2, sudden standing after showering. Now let's talk about something that happens so fast, so quietly, most people miss it entirely until it's too late. Linda was 83, sharp as ever, full of stories, still the matriarch at every family dinner. She lived alone, but her daughter called her every night just to check in. One morning, Linda decided to take a shower before her daughter's weekend visit. She did everything right, or so it seemed. She took her time, used her shower stool, even had the bathroom fan running. But the moment she stood up, something shifted. Her vision blurred, her knees buckled, and before she could catch herself, she fainted. Thankfully, she fell backward onto a soft bath mat. She had a small bruise. But what if she had hit her head? What if she had fallen forward? What if no one had found her for hours? Her daughter thought it was just dehydration. She said, "Mom, you probably just forgot to drink water this morning." But that wasn't the full story. What actually happened is something called orthostatic hypotension. It's when the body can't adjust quickly enough to changes in position. So when you stand up, especially from a warm shower, your blood pressure plummets. And if the blood isn't reaching the brain fast enough, you feel lightheaded, you get dizzy, you might pass out. Now, for younger folks, it's usually harmless. But in seniors, that drop in blood pressure can become a dangerous trigger. It can weaken vessels, strain the heart, and if the arteries are already fragile, it can be the tipping point toward a stroke. The worst part is, families often dismiss these episodes. They say, maybe she was tired, maybe it's her meds. And sure, those things can play a role. But when an elder loses consciousness or even just feels dizzy after a shower, that's not a moment to ignore. That's your cue to step in gently, lovingly, and make some changes. Here's what helps. First, grab bars. Not the kind that make the bathroom look like a hospital. They're stylish, subtle options that blend right into the walls. They give just enough stability for a safe transition from sitting to standing. Second, encourage them to sit for a moment after the shower. Wrap them in a towel, let them catch their breath. Standing immediately while the body is still adjusting from the heat and steam, that's the danger zone. Third, make movement gradual. Instead of jumping up, have them do in steps. Sit, then lean forward. Plant their feet. Take a few breaths, then rise slowly. These changes may seem small, even unnecessary, but they're not. They're the kind of quiet protections that can mean the difference between safety and a silent emergency. Because fainting is scary, but it's also a symptom, one that shouldn't be ignored. And yet, there's another habit, one even quieter, one that doesn't involve falling or fainting, but something most people simply choose to ignore. Habit 3, ignoring the urge to urinate. Let's talk about something most people overlook literally. A habit so subtle it slips by in the quietest hours of the night. And yet, it holds real danger. Frank was 81, a proud veteran, soft-spoken, polite, and the kind of man who never wanted to be a burden. Every night, his daughter would ask, "Dad, did you sleep well?" And every night he'd say, "Just fine." But what he didn't say was that he woke up twice, sometimes 3 times, with the urge to pee, and he ignored it. Why? Because getting out of bed felt risky. The hallway felt long, and the last thing he wanted was to fall in the dark. So he'd lie there, still, waiting for the urge to pass, holding it in, night after night. 3 weeks later, Frank had a mini stroke. He survived, thankfully, but he never fully got his speech back. And here's the thing, it wasn't random. What most people don't realize is that ignoring the need to urinate, especially over and over again, puts real stress on the body. The bladder fills, the pressure rises, and to keep it all in, your body tenses, it clamps down. Blood pressure climbs. The circulatory system strains. That tension doesn't just stay in the bladder. It spreads to the heart, to the vessels in the brain, and especially for older adults whose arteries may already be stiff, narrow, or weakened. This kind of silent overnight stress is a risk multiplier for strokes. Now here's where the misunderstanding happens. People assume it's just forgetfulness or stubbornness. They say, he's just being lazy, or worse, he's doing it on purpose. But that's not it. Often, the reason seniors hold it in is because of fear. Fear of falling, fear of being cold, fear of waking someone, fear of getting up and not making it in time. So instead of pushing through those fears, they hold it, and the body suffers in silence. But you can help without making them feel ashamed or helpless. Start by installing night lights, soft, warm ones that guide the path from the bed to the bathroom, so they don't feel like they're walking into darkness. Then, consider an easy-access toilet setup. That might mean a commode by the bed, a raised toilet seat, or even grab bars along the route. And most importantly, talk to them, gently, without judgment. Let them know it's okay to get up. Let them know you want them to go when they need to, not just when it's convenient. Because stroke prevention doesn't always come from a doctor's office. Sometimes it starts right there in the soft glow of a hallway light, guiding someone safely to the bathroom. Still, not every warning sign involves doing something. Sometimes it's the things they stop doing altogether that tell us the most. Habit 4, skipping regular showers. Now, let's talk about something that's easy to dismiss because it doesn't look like a crisis. It looks like someone just doesn't feel like getting in a shower. Maria was 76, warm, elegant, used to take pride in her appearance, always wore her favorite scarf, always spritzed a little perfume before leaving the house. But slowly, her daughter noticed something different. First, it was little things. Maria stopped doing her hair. Then she began wearing the same sweater several days in a row. Eventually, she stopped showering altogether. Her family thought she was just going through a low mood. They said, maybe she's feeling a bit down, or maybe she just doesn't care anymore. But the truth was deeper than that. When seniors start neglecting personal hygiene, especially when it's a new pattern, it can be more than just emotional. It can be neurological, because showering isn't just about water and soap. It's about planning, coordination, standing, balancing, and following a sequence. And when the brain isn't getting enough oxygen, those tasks, once simple, start to feel overwhelming, sometimes even impossible. It's a quiet red flag, a sign that blood flow to the brain might be compromised, that vascular cognitive decline could be setting in. And for some, it's a warning sign that a stroke is on the horizon. But here's where it gets tricky. Families often mistake this for personality change. They say, she's just being difficult, or he's always been a little stubborn. And yes, depression can absolutely play a role, but so can brain fog. So can early vascular deterioration, tiny, silent changes in the brain that erode function little by little. So what do you do when someone stops showering? You start by removing the obstacles, not just physical but emotional. Introduce a shower chair so they don't feel like they're going to slip. Install a handheld shower head. Make sure the water temperature is just right. Make it feel safe, not clinical. And don't shame them. Instead of saying, you need a shower, try, hey mom, how about I help you get freshened up today? I'll even lay out your favorite towel. Create gentle routines. Shower days. Light music. A lavender candle. Something familiar that doesn't feel like a chore. Something that feels like care. And if it's still hard, bring in a caregiver. Not just for assistance, but for comfort. Someone who knows how to move slowly, who understands dignity. Because neglecting hygiene isn't laziness. It's often the body's way of saying, I'm struggling more than I let on. And when you catch that early, when you recognize that skipped shower as a signal instead of quirk, you can act before the damage is done. Now, some of these habits are quiet, hidden, easy to miss. But the next one, it's loud, it's visible, and yet it might be the most underestimated habit of all. Habit 5, straining to defecate. Now, this one's uncomfortable to talk about, but it needs to be said because the risk is real and it's far more common than most people realize. Paul was 84, quiet, kind, used to be a mailman. He had his morning routine down to the minute. Coffee at 7, toast at 7:15, and always the bathroom by 7:30. He liked his routine. It gave him a sense of control. But one morning, something didn't go right. His wife heard a thud. By the time she reached the bathroom, Paul was on the floor, unconscious, his body still seated, his face pale, lips slightly blue. It wasn't a heart attack. It wasn't a fall. It was a stroke, and the doctors traced it back to what he was doing at that very moment. Straining, pushing too hard to have a bowel movement. You see, what most people don't understand is that this kind of straining, especially in seniors, isn't just uncomfortable. It's dangerous. When you bear down like that, especially while holding your breath, you spike your intracranial pressure. That means pressure inside the skull shoots up fast. At the same time, blood pressure surges throughout the body. Veins swell, arteries tighten, and for someone whose blood vessels may already be fragile, that sudden pressure can cause one of them to rupture, especially in the brain. And here's the scary part. It often happens in the morning when blood pressure is already at its natural daily peak. Combine that with a hot drink, some stress, and the body's own aging systems, and you've got the perfect storm. Yet most families don't think twice about it. They say, he's just constipated again, or that's normal at that age. But it's not just a minor issue. It's a stroke trigger, hiding in plain sight. So what can you do? Start with prevention. Encourage natural stool softeners, things like prunes, chia seeds, magnesium-rich foods. They work better than harsh laxatives and don't cause dependency. Next, look at toilet posture. Consider a small footstool. It sounds simple, but squatting slightly changes the angle of the colon, making elimination smoother and less strained. And be mindful of stimulants. Too much caffeine, especially on an empty stomach, can create a surge in urgency, followed by effort. It's better to start the day with hydration before hitting the coffee. And finally, don't ignore the signals. If your loved one is spending too much time in the bathroom, if they seem winded or exhausted afterward, ask, gently, lovingly, because these are private habits, yes. But when the consequences are this serious, when a simple routine can turn into an emergency, that privacy must be met with awareness, not avoidance. Because now you know, you've seen the patterns, you've heard the stories, you understand how these small, seemingly harmless bathroom habits can silently increase the risk of stroke by up to 300%. These habits may feel private, but the consequences are painfully public. Watching our loved ones change, it's one of the hardest things we go through, not because we don't expect it, but because when it finally happens, it feels like a piece of them slips away in such tiny, quiet moments. Moments we don't always catch in time. And when the signs show up not in a doctor's office, but in something as everyday as a bathroom habit, that's when it hits hardest. Because we ask ourselves, how did I not see it? It's painful to watch someone who once took care of you now struggle with things they never would have before. To see them hesitate, to see them forget, to hear them say, I'm fine, when you know deep down they're not. But I want you to know something. You are not powerless. You're not too late. And you're not alone. Because now, you've seen what most people overlook. You've learned the signs. You understand the connections. And you know where to start. This isn't about fear. This is about being ready, being aware, and being present enough to say, hey, I noticed something, and I want to make sure you're okay. That's all it takes. A few minutes. A soft conversation. A little courage to ask the uncomfortable question. Because those few minutes, that gentle nudge, that might be the moment that prevents a stroke. That might be the moment that changes everything. So please, take that moment today. Check in. Not just, did you eat? Or did you take your meds? But, how are you feeling when you go to the bathroom? Do you feel safe getting in and out of the shower? Are you having trouble that you haven't mentioned? Ask with love, listen with patience, and respond with compassion. Because the bathroom might be private, but your care doesn't have to stay quiet. You're doing something beautiful. You're showing up. You're learning. And that makes you part of something powerful. A quiet kind of love. The kind that watches, that notices, that says, I'm here for you. So yes, it's hard. Yes, it's emotional. But it's also the most meaningful kind of care we can give. The kind that meets people where they are, even in the most unspoken corners of their daily life. And if you ever feel overwhelmed, just remember, you are not alone. There's a whole community here of people who care just as deeply as you do. And together, with awareness, with kindness, and with steady, quiet action, we can make the final chapters of our loved ones' lives not just safer, but gentler, more peaceful, and filled with the same love they once gave to us. Let's take a breath and bring it all together. We've talked about 5 everyday habits, simple things, right? But not so simple when you see them through the lens of real risk. So let's quickly recap what we've learned today. First, long bathroom sitting. It's not just about comfort or constipation. It's a moment where pressure builds, literally, and the brain could be at risk. Second, standing too quickly after a hot shower. something so automatic. Yet in seniors, it can cause the kind of drop in blood pressure that leads to sudden fainting or worse. Third, ignoring the urge to urinate, not out of stubbornness, but often out of fear. Fear of falling, fear of slipping. But holding it in can quietly damage the system. Fourth, skipping showers. Not laziness, not just low mood, but often a subtle sign that the brain is working harder than it should, struggling quietly. And fifth, straining to defecate. The kind of effort that spikes blood pressure and brain pressure at once. A dangerous combination for an aging body. These aren't just bathroom routines. They're hidden red flags. And if you've seen even one of them in someone you care about, it's time to take it seriously. So let's talk together. Have you noticed any of these signs in your loved ones? A change in routine, a moment that felt off, something you shrugged off at the time but now feels like more? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one, not just to reply, but to remind you that you're not going through this alone. And if this video helped you see something more clearly, if it helped you feel more prepared, more informed, more connected to the people you love, then please subscribe to Elderly Care. This channel isn't about fear. It's about empowerment. It's about showing up with love, with clarity, and with the kind of quiet knowledge that can truly change lives. Because sometimes one video, one conversation, one shared experience can be the thing that turns worry into wisdom. So thank you for being here. Thank you for caring. And thank you for being the kind of person who chooses to learn, even when it's hard. Stay vigilant, stay compassionate, and I'll see you in the next one.